Thanks for staying with us. So a decade ago, 276 Chibok girls were seized from their school by Islamist Boko Haram militants. The kidnapping sparked a huge global outcry, and 10 years on, almost 100 of those Chibok girls are still thought to be held captive. Speaking on this is Dr. Aisha Mohammed. She is the co-founder of the Bring Back Our Girls movement and CEO of the Murtala Mohammed Foundation. Welcome with us, our guest. Welcome to the show. Good to have you.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. So to join the conversation, you can call us on 081-0764-1679, 090-241-63440. You can also tweet to us at TVC. Can I please hashtag YourViewTVC so we can read your tweets? It was a pleasure to have people come on and talk about these kind of projects, because a lot of Nigerians, this was a major situation in Nigeria that had its global attention. And 10 years on, Nigerians are still wondering what's going on with the girls. Could you just give us a bit of an update from your own perspective, where we are with the Chibok girls and how they are doing, if what the government is doing so far to bring them back?
Okay, so let me start by saying that. So we're actually releasing a report later this afternoon. That's the foundation. Because we've been tracking the girls since 2015. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the book that I've written as a result of that. So in 2014, April 14, 276 girls were actually taken from their school. Now, the really unfortunate thing was, they didn't go in looking for girls. They went looking for a block-making machine, and they were looking for food. Everybody knew at that time, yes, this is something that has come out as a result of the girls who have actually now come back and who've told us what happened. So at that time, Buniya, they had happened in Yobe State about a month and a half before. They had gone into the school, killed 59 boys, and then they had locked the girls in an assembly hall and told them, go home, school is not a place for girls. So everybody should have been on alert. Memos had gone round that they shouldn't have allowed girls into school. Somebody somewhere must have lost the memo. They gathered 300 plus girls in one place. Some of them were girls who had left the school 10 years before and were taking remedial classes. That was why, if you notice, in the list of the girls that were released in 2017, one of them actually came back with a baby that had been conceived before she went into captivity because she was already married and pregnant. So they got there, had actually taken the food, were still looking for the block-making machine and couldn't believe their eyes when they saw 300 girls, plus girls. So they panicked. The first thing was, should we burn them? Second one was, let's burn them alive, let's kill them, let's do this. And then one of them just said, you know what, let's take them to Shekau. You'll know what to do with them. So they removed all the food, went into the community, sequestered more vehicles, packed all of the girls in these trucks and started going to Sambisa Forest. Now you need to understand this. They were traveling so slowly. 57 girls managed to jump out. They were grabbing onto trees. They were, jumping out of trucks. One or two had injuries. And the worst thing about it was that parents were calling the military, they were calling the police, and there was no response. On the outskirts of Sambisa, they were there for 3 days. Finally, Boko Haram took 219 girls into Sambisa. And you know that it took almost 2 years for the first girl to come out. At that time, there was so much despair, nobody knew. And a year after that was when Boko Haram started using girls as female suicide bombers. So there was a lot of fear that they could have been the Chibok girls, but it turned out that that's not the case, at least not that we can verify. Now, between then and now, we have a total of 128 girls who have made it back. 21 were negotiated for in October 2016. Another set were negotiated for in May 2017, 82. And then, in between, girls were just coming back in bits. Some of them would escape. Some of them, if the military went into Sambisa Forest or into their camps, they would bring them back. Some, they would just, find a lot of women, random women, and we would find that some of the Chibok girls were amongst them. Today, we still have 91 girls in Boko Haram captivity till today.
91. Are there any plans to try and release them? How do we get to them? How do you, because 10 years ago, that means if they were 16, they're 26 now.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they're
Adults.
yeah, they're full grown women now. What can we do to help these girls?
So, in fact,
Now they're women.
to even go to your point, 10 years, so the youngest girl at that time was probably 13. Today she's 23. If you imagine that the first 3 years of her life, she didn't know much. She's actually spent half of her life with Boko Haram insurgents. So we have a real live issue now, because the most recent girls who've come out 10 years later, right, have been married, they've had children. Some have come out. Oh, by the way, the statistic, 34 children were born to the Chibok girls. So you can imagine what we're talking about in terms of the sexual assaults, forced marriage. A lot of them were forced to marry. So so you now have girls who've come back and who have said they're not going to come. In fact, when they were asking that they should release them, said they won't come back if they won't come back with their Boko Haram husbands and their children. So
is the conversation now, is it still around bringing back our girls? Is it still around, should the clamor still be concerning bringing them back, or in trying to resettle what the family system would look like? What exactly is this is a decade after Chibok, what is the next advocacy concerning Chibok going to look like? Obviously,
assuming they are adults already and
yes,
already assimilated
no
into
longer
that.
bring back our girls.
Yeah.
It is now, it has to morph into something else. What do you foresee it morphing into, and how do you believe the next stage of advocacy should, what part should it take?
So for me, I think it's accounting for the girls. Let's even start by even trying to account for all the 219 girls. At least we believe at least a third of them have been killed. Yes, we know that, some of them, the Nigerian military admitted that they were killed in airstrikes. And then some of them clearly, they died from childbirth. Some of them died from snake bites. But because the official figures have not been released, it's very difficult for anybody. But the girls have come back. One or two families have been notified, especially if the girls who were out there were related to them. So there was a girl who came back and said her cousin died on her lap. And she just, especially when she came back, they said, look, you can't tell her mother because how are we going to deal with it? Well, she said she just couldn't. She kept having dreams about her. And eventually they said to her, look, you have to tell the mother. And they've now had a service. But that's one occasion. So I think the issue is accountability. There are enough girls who've come back who have told us where the remaining girls are. Yes, at least roughly. They took them to other parts of Africa quite quickly. The most recent girl was found in Cameroon. The most recent girl who was found in Cameroon.
Wow.
Some of them, the rumors are they took them as far as Central African Republic.
Wow.
As far as
Central African Republic. But if they speak to the girls, they should be able, let's account for most of the girls. Let's even know where they are. I still think the clamor for bring back our girls hasn't expired. I think it's important because these girls were taken as children under our watch.
Okay.
Right? All of us. Right. There's a collective responsibility here. Now, whether they come back with a different mindset is a totally different issue. And I remember when we started all this clamor, a lot of the mothers said, you know what, bring back our daughters. We don't care whether they're going to come back married, whether they're going to come back with children, whatever state they're in, just bring them back. I still think that has not changed. I think it's our responsibility to do that. Now, there are issues around how do you then deal with the trauma? How do you deal with this, And I'm not even sure it's a misplaced affinity. I think all of us are women here. Once you become a mother, your view of life changes about a lot of things. You understand what I'm saying? So I think that wanting to be with their husbands, I would probably say 80% of that clamor has to do with the fact that they're now mothers. There's a girl who had 4 children.
Wow.
She has a total of 4 children. So, and then we're dealing with a lot of stigma, by the way. So the ones who have come back and remarried into the community are stigmatized. So the other thing is you say, okay, if we say I think we cannot have a situation where we're forceful about anything. I think what we need to do is really work with all of these young women You understand what I mean? Work with psychiatrists, work with psychologists, work with the religious communities and see how we can, work with them and really, get behind their heads and start to then, take them through. You understand what I'm saying?
Gotcha. Okay, I
Part
get
of the
it.
headlines this morning said that the parents who are yet to have their children, they said they are still very hopeful that their children will come back. How can we help the parents? Because I'm sure that it's a trying period to remember that, or to even think about it, that my daughter was missing 10 years ago. Like the Yorubas who say that a dead child is better than a
Yes, I
missing child.
agree.
So how do we help the parents? Are we expecting that very soon? Are we pacifying them very soon? What is the hope we are going to give these parents who are yet to find their children 10 years after?
Okay, so about 3 or 4 days ago, one of the mothers actually was with me. She's one of the mothers who signed the letter. And, that's part of the conversation, we had with her. They keep reaching out to the authorities, and I think that responsibility is there. At the end of the day, the primary responsibility for finding the Chibok girls will lie with the Nigerian military. Individuals can't do it. And I think that's where they need to say, reinvigorate the intelligence. Like I said earlier, enough people have come out from Sambisa Forest for us to know. Let them, yes, information. Let them start to map out a new strategy. What is it that we are going to do to help them? Because I cannot imagine, and I do speak to them. Even though I speak to them, I cannot imagine what a parent must be going through 10 years after.
In your view, do you think the government could have done much better?
Oh, definitely.
And how could they have? Yes, we understand the circumstances in which they were taken away, but what kind of steps do you think the government should have taken to avoid this situation of 10 years with their nuts?
We left those girls in there too long. Honestly, that is the biggest mistake we made. We should have gone immediately after. As difficult as it might have been, we should have gone after those girls. Those girls were on the fringe of Sambisa Forest for 3 days. We left those girls in there way, way too long. And I still believe it's not lost. I think.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, because you said we left them there too long. And they were in this Sambisa Forest, because the way I hear about Sambisa Forest, it's not somewhere that the military can just go in. I don't know, because I don't know, maybe there are dragons there, or I don't know, lions as guards. Because
It's vast.
the
There's
a
really
large
vast.
landmass.
But for military, I wouldn't think it would be hard for them to go in. Why do you think it has taken them? Why can't they even enter Sambisa Forest? There has to be a reason.
So Sambisa Forest got harder over the years, but in 2014, it was not, I don't believe it was that difficult. I think there was a failure of intelligence, you understand? And then there's this general view, unfortunately, I don't know, it probably no longer applies now, but at that time, these girls from this community, it's a very...
For a long time, people didn't know. They didn't even believe that it was actually true. For the first few months, the argument was that how can they get that 300? How can 300 people be kidnapped? How can 200 people have... What kind of school had that people? It was all political. People were saying it's a lie, it's not true, it's a lie, it's not true. Until we started having people...
That could have stalled the intelligence also. That could have also stalled
it was that period. They always say that if you kidnapping, the first 48 hours, very critical. But I'm just worried about... I want to hear some good news about the psychology of those that have been rescued so far. How has it been getting them through therapy, talking to them? What has been the reaction of those people that we have been able to get out of captivity right now? Well, captivity, they've become a life, how has it been resettling the people?
So that's the good thing about it, and that's why I keep emphasizing leaving them too long. The girls who came out earlier are so different from the girls who came out so much later. So the girls who came out in the first 2-3 years, there was an opportunity to, reintegrate them. They were sent back to school. Many of them are at AUN, You know, I'm not even counting the 57 who escaped initially, because some of them are in school in the US as well, and they're getting ready. Some have graduated, some are getting ready to graduate. So that work, and the government, I mean, to be honest, most of them went through the Ministry of Women Affairs. They did a good job of trying to reintegrate them back, whether it was giving them remedial classes so that they could go back to school and so on. And AON is doing an incredible job for those girls that are there. So the first few years, but the latter ones who have stayed much longer have been radicalized a bit more. And like I said, they've created bonds, they've had children. Some were forced to marry immediately upon being abducted. So you can imagine a child who is 13 who is forced to marry at 13 plus. That's all she knows. You understand what I mean? They've gone through hell and back again. There's a lot of hunger. Girls, you know, came back and told stories of starvation. There was a lot of, you know, death in terms of, and then the trauma. You understand what I'm saying? And then, of course, you know, there were some who were forcefully converted from Christianity into Islam. But, you know, even the girls that went there as Muslims, I always tell people that, you know, people imagine, oh, it's easier for them. No, because it's an extremist ideology. That's not what they're familiar with. So you can imagine what we're talking about here. So I think for the latter years, you know, those are the ones that we're really hoping that we can create some kind of program. But this program can't be the usual one, because it's going to, I don't even think you can go to any psychologist anywhere in the world and they will tell you, this is how I'm going to do it. It actually has to require a deep
Personalized.
thinking about it, because it's such an unusual situation. How do you deal with the agency? A girl who was abducted at 13, who's come back as an adult at 23, she's telling you, I'm an adult, I can make my decisions. But when you were abducted, you were still a child. How do you deal with the agency of that kind of child or adult?
I know you have a book. Tell us, why did you think it was necessary to write that book, and what's the book about?
Okay, so I didn't start out writing a
I'm
book.
so sorry. I have the caller's been holding on. Samuel, are you still there? I'm sorry. Samuel from Jos. I'm so sorry for keeping you. Go ahead, please. Go ahead, Samuel.
Okay, good morning.
Morning, sir.
Morning.
You see, let me say, the way we talk and the fight in this country is appalling and deplorable. I wouldn't want to subscribe to the fact or what they have made us to believe that non-state actors are more sophisticated and they're more efficient than our military. I mean, how do we explain that to a layman? That non-state actors can be more sophisticated, more equipped, more brave, bolder than Nigerian military. That this girl spent 2 years in the hands of the abductors and the captors. Please, I would want to enjoy the Nigerian military. Bring these guys back. Give me their women. They want to see them. If they actually want to see them. If they have been married to the terrorists who want to see them. Can you imagine what will be going through the minds of the parents of these girls? I mean, it's one thing that even international community will be laughing at us. Okay, let me tell you one thing. The 3 months now, they have broke the line of my wife for non-registration of linking her line with me. And then you listen to see people communicating with their own registered lines, taking ransom.
Thank you very much, Samuel. I didn't get a lot of
He was talking about different things, about the fact that no matter how they are, parents would want their children to still come back, no matter what. He also spoke about the fact that how come kidnapping is still going on. They've barred the line of his wife, but all kidnappers are able to talk. So how is that still happening? So there's a whole lot the government can do according
They barred
to
the
him.
line of his wife because maybe she doesn't have her NIN or
But
something.
kidnappers are able to
They
talk.
have an NIN.
Well, I mean, these are questions for the government. But let me come back to you
Yes,
concerning your
the
book. Why did you think it was necessary to write that book? Tell us about the book, actually, first.
Okay, so it actually didn't start out as a book, but in 2015, none of the girls had come out. But I had had the opportunity to meet a few of the parents, so I knew, that, this story was as real as it could get. And everybody, there was a lot of denial, there's a lot of, there were rumors going around that it didn't happen. People were like, how could it possibly have happened? So I then said, all right, it's very simple. We know the parents, they live in Chibok. Why don't we send journalist, a cinematographer, and a photographer to Chibok. That was actually how it started. So they went, and of course it was...
They were not afraid?
They were. The insurgency was raging, was in 2015, was in the middle of the insurgency. And they were actually exceptionally brave because, they all went in there. And they were able to interview the parents. And as those pictures and the stories started coming out, it was like, oh my word, And of course, it was very emotional for them because they would all break down, then they would recover, then they would start. I mean, that's how difficult it was. And it was at that point we actually then thought, okay, when they brought out all the data, and then we started thinking, what do we do with this? And then that was when the idea of a book came up, that it's important for us to tell our own stories because we don't catalog enough of our own stories from the perspective. So actually what the book is about narratives from the parents talking about their children before they returned. The most beautiful thing about it is that when the girls started to return, I would ask them, because I just wanted to know, through those years that they were there sort of, was it dark? Did they know that people were looking for them? And some of them would say yes, some of them would say no. But one of them said, every time Nigeria bombed the Boko Haram enclaves, they would tell them, look at this, they're bombing you because they're not interested in you coming back. So I would say to the girl, there was one particular one, I opened the manuscript, at that time it wasn't a book, and I read out what her mother said about her, even when she was so missing. And then the girls themselves started to actually believe. So it actually played two parts because it then gave them confidence and comfort that we were actually looking for them.
Yeah. So you're like a private citizen that just got involved, or was you like a foundational? Because how did you get involved? Were you just moved by the story and said, okay, let me get a camera guy, journalist, and let me fly them over to Chibok? How did you get involved in this project of Bring Back Our Girls?
Okay, so two things. I run the Murtala Mohammed Foundation, and we've been doing a lot of work around humanitarian response. But in 2009, the story of Boko Haram goes as far back as 2009. In 2009, when there was this whole concern about what Boko Haram was going to become, the northern governors set up a committee on Boko Haram. It was one of the first committees, and I was one of the first women in that group. So I started engaging with people who were involved with that group that far back. That's the first thing. The second thing was that Chibok, from a personal perspective, the girls were abducted two days before my youngest daughter turned 14. I will never forget. And I remember sitting there thinking as a mother, can you imagine if it was mine?
Close.
Yeah, I can't sit there. We really have a responsibility. And then as time progressed and I started to meet the mothers, there's this sense of, trust. What are you going to do? How are you going to help us? Do you understand what I'm saying? So, and then we've built, a relationship over the years. I actually went to Chibok for the 2nd anniversary. It was harrowing, yeah. We were,
All right, I have to go on a short break now. When we come back, we wrap up with our guests. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.